Have you ever felt that the more you think, the more distant you become from others? That the deeper your understanding, the harder it is to connect with people? It's not just in your mind. Society has often had a complicated relationship with deep thinkers, not because they're wrong, but because they see truths others aren't ready to face. Think about history. Brilliant minds from Socrates to Einstein have been misunderstood, ignored, or even ridiculed. It wasn't because they lacked intelligence, but because their ideas challenged the comfortable illusions that most people hold dear. They made people uncomfortable, too uncomfortable. Schopenhauer, a philosopher known for his blunt honesty, once claimed that intelligence is a curse. It isolates those who see the world too clearly. But why does this happen? Why does society push those who think deeply to the fringes? The answer lies in human nature and psychology. When you're around someone who is physically stronger, you might admire them. When you meet someone who is wealthier, you may even envy them, but you don't feel personally threatened. However, when you come across someone who is intellectually superior, something strange happens. Psychologists call it the mirror effect. Deep thinkers don't just share new ideas, they reflect back our own limitations, and people don't like that. Even when the deep thinker says nothing, their mere presence can make others feel inadequate. This is not intentional, it's a subconscious defense mechanism. But why does intelligence trigger the same fear circuits as a real threat? To understand, we need to look back at human evolution. For most of history, survival didn't depend on being the smartest. It depended on being accepted by the group. In tribal societies, harmony meant safety. Rejection from the group often led to death. This is why our brains are wired for social acceptance rather than intellectual pursuits. When someone highly intelligent enters a social situation, they unknowingly disrupt the group dynamic. Their very presence challenges social norms, existing ideas, and group cohesion. This doesn't just make people uncomfortable, it activates a deep-seated survival mechanism, making the intellectual seem like a threat. This is why many deep thinkers feel isolated, not because they lack social skills, but because their intelligence stands out in a world that values conformity. A 2021 study from Stanford University revealed something even more surprising. The reaction to deep thinkers is context-dependent. When people interact with an intellectual one-on-one, they don't feel threatened. But in group settings, that threat response spikes dramatically. Why? Because in groups, social status becomes more important. People don't just react to intelligence, they react to how they're perceived in comparison. If someone feels overshadowed by a deep thinker, their instinct is to undermine or exclude that person in order to protect their own social standing. This explains why deep thinkers often find meaningful conversations in private settings but struggle in larger social environments. It's not about social awkwardness, it's about the threat to social status that their intelligence poses. Psychologists have identified several cognitive biases that further explain why intelligence is often met with resistance. For example, the Dunning-Kruger effect suggests that people with lower ability tend to overestimate their intelligence, while highly intelligent people often doubt themselves. This creates friction, as those who know less tend to dismiss those who know more. Another factor is status quo bias, the brain's preference for familiar, comfortable ideas over new, complex truths. Intelligence often disrupts this comfort zone, making people uncomfortable. Then there's the backfire effect. When people are confronted with information that contradicts their beliefs, they don't change their minds. Instead, they double down on what they already believe. In the digital age, social media has amplified this rejection of intelligence. Algorithms prioritize engagement over depth, meaning sensational, emotionally charged content spreads faster than thoughtful, nuanced discussions. The most viral content is often simple, catchy, and misleading, while deeper, more complex ideas struggle to gain traction. This shift in society has made it harder for deep thinkers to find a broad audience. It's not that people don't value intelligence, but in a world dominated by entertainment and quick hits of dopamine, deep thought is often overlooked. So, what does this mean for deep thinkers? The rejection of intelligence isn't just a social phenomenon, it's biological, psychological, and cultural. It's embedded in human nature, reinforced by group dynamics, and exacerbated by modern technology. This doesn't mean deep thinkers should stop sharing their ideas, but it does mean they need to understand the forces working against them. But if society resists intelligence, what does it actually embrace? Comfort. A world where predictability and ease are preferred over truth. Schopenhauer believed that intelligence wasn't a gift, but a burden. Unlike others who saw intelligence as the key to success, he argued that the smarter someone is, the harder it is for them to connect with society. Why is intelligence such a burden? Schopenhauer's philosophy centered on a concept he called the will, a blind, irrational force that drives human behavior. Most people are controlled by this will to live, seeking pleasure and avoiding discomfort. But deep thinkers, driven by the will to truth, seek understanding, even when it leads to pain and isolation. This creates a fundamental divide between intellectuals and the rest of society. While most people find meaning in relationships, entertainment, and comfort, deep thinkers often see these things as distractions. They crave depth, truth, and existential understanding, and this disconnect makes it hard for them to relate to others. Schopenhauer believed that as a person becomes more aware of human nature, it becomes harder to engage in social life. Deep thinkers see through the illusions and superficialities that most people live by, and this often leaves them feeling alienated in a world that values comfort over critical thought.